Welcome to another episode of Exit Philosophy with Mal Ramanan and Rich Griffin. We got a lot to talk about today. The Bronze Age of Blue Jays baseball has arrived, meaning they're always on the podium, they're always finishing third, getting that bronze medal. So
Yeah.
we'll talk about that. But it's typical Canadian. It's great. That's what we always used to do until we had those swimmers in the pool who's all of a sudden threw things off by starting to win gold.
We can use a
Um,
little gold around here soon.
yeah, for sure. But not cold because the Arctic freeze is going to sweep through this coming week, this weekend. And this is the time where normally we would be getting ready to go to spring training and, we can put up with another 10
Yeah,
days
right.
of this, but no more. We're going to have to gut this one out.
It's funny how that didn't bother me so much back in the day, right? You're
Right.
like, oh yeah, I'll be in Florida very soon, so won't have to deal with it. But
In Montreal, I went like 3 or 4 years without a winter coat because
in
uh,
Montreal,
Olympic Stadium was like I live near the Forum, and you go down to the Metro and you go and it's indoors all the way to the stadium. And I knew that come February I'd be gone. So I was proud of the fact that I never had a winter coat, which means obviously I didn't plan on shoveling anybody's driveway at that point.
that's quite a neighbor you were too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Hey, one before we get into all our topics today, I saw you tweet about a bar fight where Larry Walker may have been involved or come to your defense. I'm like, well, I've already had a couple people reach out and say, well, I got to hear about this story. So I said, I got to ask you right out of the chute. What was that about?
Well, I mean, the tweet was, who among major league players would you like to have your back in a bar fight? And I tweeted back, oh, easy. Larry Walker already happened. And so I was surprised at how much reaction that engendered. But
Yeah.
the story was that we landed in St. Louis. The Expos charter landed in St. Louis after a day game on the road somewhere. So it was about 9:30. And we went to the Missouri Bar and Grill, which was our favorite hangout. Trifon was the owner, and he kept it open till the sun was coming up if we really
Right.
wanted to. So a couple of the
That's
flight
sad that you
attendants,
know that.
the airline Braniff was based in St. Louis. A couple of flight attendants were going to come with us,
Okay.
and it was Dave Van Horn, Larry Walker, Mark Gardner, the right
Oh, it's
hand.
a good start to a story right there. Right.
And so we went to the Missouri Bar and Grill. It's a dive bar that you would love.
Yes, I would.
Jukebox, one side where there's live music on the weekends, and then the wall, and then the drinking area. We had an umpire, a famous umpire, come in at 2 in the morning one time and go. He was with his 12-year-old son, and he had his 12-year-old son playing skittle bowling or something in the corner at 2:30 in the morning. And he puts his scotch down on the bar and goes over and says, "Son, remember when you talk to your mom tomorrow, we went to the top of the arch." So he had this figured out.
That'd be dad. Yeah.
So this night, Larry Walker was the celebrity bartender, self-appointed, so that he could be closer to the beer.
To the drinks. Yes, yes.
So we were talking, Dave Van Horn and a couple of the flight attendants and me and a couple other people. We're talking over against the wall, and there was this little guy with long hair, a biker dude. He was just paying very close attention. And at one point, I leaned over to whisper something to the main flight attendant, and he came and grabbed me from behind and spun me around and grabbed my shirt. And Larry Walker leaped over the bar from his celebrity bartender role, grabbed the guy from behind, held him up against the wall, and just started to bang him against the wall. Meanwhile, he ripped my shirt completely. And
Really?
turns out that this guy, Trifon, the owner, was on the road, was away. The flight attendant is his full-time girlfriend, and he hired a biker to take care of her and make sure that nobody harassed her. Do I look like I would harass anyone? So anyway,
Not a chance, Griff. Not a chance.
this guy was being throttled against the wall with a piece of my shirt in his hand. So the next day in the press box, the flight attendant showed up, came over to my seat, and had a brand new shirt for me. She felt so guilty about it. And so that story has stuck with me. And when this tweet sort of spurred my memory, that's how it came about. And there's nobody I would rather have back in
No,
than Larry Walker.
I'd hate to see what would have happened had he not been there. So,
Oh yeah, I would have pummeled a guy.
yeah, right. The biker dude, for sure.
Anyway, so the Jays.
The guy really trusted his girlfriend, I see.
Oh yeah, she was actually quite stunning, but
I'm sure.
yeah, I would. In that case, he wouldn't have to worry about me, right?
Right, right. Larry, maybe, but yeah,
Yeah, Larry.
yeah,
Yeah, here's our PR guy.
yeah.
So now we get to, oh yeah, I wanted to ask you about your St. Catharines based ball club. How's that coming along?
Yep.
I hear you're down to the final list of potential names. That's
Yep.
exciting.
Yep. Clearly, we have us as press conference on the 6th. I'll be on CHCH a week today, actually, in Hamilton. So if those that are in the area and get the big Channel 11 network there, you can
That's what we
see.
watch every night at home. I'll be watching.
Well, well,
Yeah.
you'll be watching me. So, obviously getting the word out, and we're acquiring players as we speak. So, I mean, it's just a continuation of everything we spoke about last week, but just preparing for that press conference. And I think I think our first game is on the 7th, actually, of June. We start on the road, so just finalizing that. So we'll have lots to announce as
Nice.
we.
You start on the road just the same way that the Blue Jays started on the road when they were finishing their renovations.
Yeah, big renos. Yeah, yeah, big plans. It actually doesn't hurt in this case because you just, a couple more days to prepare
Yeah,
and when you never actually put on a show before, it doesn't hurt.
the
It doesn't.
biggest renovation is like painting the lines in the parking lot, right?
That's right. That's right. Making sure the beer's cold.
And just one more thing about media is that I did an interview earlier this week with the great Terry Francona.
Right?
And that conversation, Griff's conversation, will be out early next week. And it's really good, if I do say so myself.
Oh, I
Terry
can.
opened up. I asked him about Gilligan's Island, and I said, Ginger or Marianne? And he said, both. And
You know,
actually,
that's
he
that's
said, actually, Mrs. Howell, too. So there's
100%. Everybody chooses Marianne, but that's actually the correct answer. Mrs. Howell wasn't actually old at the time either.
that's just an example of the hard-hitting journalism that you'll
Yeah.
get from the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure he struggled with the interview.
Let's get to the conference call with Jeff Hoffman.
Yeah.
We both listened to it. Hoffman was grilled about the fact that news came out after he had signed with the Jays as their closer, replacing Jordan Romano, 3 years, $33 million with a potential $6 million in incentives. So that could get him to 39. But the conversation really revolved around the fact that allegedly he failed, I leaked from somewhere, he failed a physical because of his shoulder with the Orioles and the Braves. And I shouldn't say allegedly because
No, no,
he
he said,
admitted that he had
yeah,
discussions with them about
yeah,
it.
the
So
MRIs.
what's your view on that? I have a
Well,
strong view.
again, I think it's kind of funny that the Jays once again finished on the podium third, but this time it was good enough to get the player.
Right.
Um, obviously, we'll find out, right? I mean, it's not the first time, teams disagree on MRIs and shoulder damage or any kind of damage. But I mean, I think it's obviously a concern at some point. But if you just take a step back, not enough of a concern where both those clubs walked away. They just didn't want to commit the dollars they had already committed. They were still interested in the player, um, just at a reduced number. You know what I mean? So, um, the Jays obviously gave him the number he was looking for and the most money, and he decided to come here. I just kind of find it funny that he disagreed with the MRIs. I don't know how that's possible. You know,
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on that. One of them is that you know, and the reaction on social media was almost comical. They were
right.
laughing at the Jays, laughing at Hoffman, saying that you ended up with a damaged product. But think about it this way: if you go see your doctor and you get a diagnosis, and you say, I want a second opinion, and you go somewhere for a second opinion, and that opinion is more positive, and you get through it, and everything's fine. People don't turn to the first doctor and say he was right. The second guy's a clown. They go, oh, congratulations, you got a diagnosis, and so we have to wait and see what happens with
What
Jeff
about a
Hoffman.
third opinion?
Third opinions, yeah, same thing.
Right.
Plenty of guys that go for second and third. But the other thing that I have a problem with is, I mean, as a PR guy, you know this, that you're not even allowed to give out a sprained ankle diagnosis without running it by a player first
Right,
and
right.
his representatives. You're not allowed to. That's why hockey goes upper body, lower body. But the
Yeah.
thing is that this isn't even the Orioles player or isn't the Braves player, and they're giving out diagnoses on Jeff Hoffman's shoulder. And I think that that is a little less than above board. I don't know what.
Well, and that comes from the Orioles. I mean, that this all stemmed from the Orioles leaking this information, and I think there's a reason the Orioles are feeling the heat a little bit on how they handle their offseason and free agent acquisitions and things like that. So, I mean, until that news came out about the Orioles and everybody started to dig into it, that's kind of when they went back and kind of got some information on the Braves because that hadn't got out beforehand. But
Would
yeah, I
you?
think that's just kind of get information leaked, kind of save face a
Yeah.
little bit, which happens all the time,
But do
obviously.
you think that because it's the sequence of the news that came out, I don't remember seeing any information that the Orioles had reached agreement with Hoffman. So would
Right.
would anyone have gone back to the Orioles if they had just let a sleeping dog lie, and the Jays made their announcement and they have a closer and he passed their physical, or I mean, was there a
Well,
reason to leak it?
no,
Did they
no, it shouldn't happen. Correct. I mean, there is no. It's not like it's a public. Not like you're going after Sasaki here, right? Or Soto. I mean, right. Um, it probably would never have seen the light of day, and it shouldn't. You're right. There's no value in that, and it does make the Jays look bad. You know what I mean? In
Yeah.
some context, there's
Yeah,
no.
and there's a lot of teams around baseball who I think are not afraid of making the Jays look bad.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Apparently, but I
Yeah.
mean, still, as you mentioned before, I'd probably be upset if I was the Blue Jays.
Which
I might be placing a call to the Orioles and just give them, the WTF. Say,
which right. Which leads me to the question that I asked on the conference call of Hoffman. Are you going to have an extra incentive, an edge when you face the Orioles next year? And he surprised me by giving me a straight up good answer on that.
great answer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
like, absolutely. He said, which normally it's, the PR stuff that we would tell
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, it was great. He's a very well-spoken young man too. I was really impressed the way he handled the press conference. It's kind of, if that's indicative of how he handles media, I think people are going to win through with Jeff and him being available to the fans via the media. I think that's kind of something to look forward to as well. So,
Yeah.
um,
And I've mentioned to you that Pat, my son, went to College of St. Rose as a backup
yeah,
catcher scholarship in Albany.
hmm.
And his pitching coach, Wayne, was Jeff Hoffman's high school pitching coach.
Oh wow,
Yeah. So Pat's got a connection with this kid too. And, it doesn't hurt that he's from upstate New York. And if you're looking for a third landing spot in your what better spot than the Blue Jays?
That's right. That's right.
But yeah,
Okay.
we're going to get around to. I mean, it's a long way from him having
That
a
being
full
said,
successful year. Yeah,
that being said, as we've and you kind of sent me an article. This is not the first time the Orioles have backed out on a deal due to some, you know, interesting medical concerns, and every time they've kind of been right. The
yeah.
player did not perform well, and there's several guys into that category, you know.
Well, what
So
about Carlos Correa? I mean, he had the most famous one because those contracts were pretty much
Fairman,
announced. So
that's
it's
right.
not like Hoffman's, which wasn't announced with the Orioles, but Correa was. He was buffeted around for I think three teams
Oof.
him down, and then he ended up. So would you say that his medical records that caused him not to be signed by the three previous teams were a concern or have been a concern in Minnesota, or is it just injuries that are separate from that?
Yeah, that's hard to say, right? And he's clearly played, so I'll give him that. I think the other concern is Hoffman's a pitcher, which I think puts a little more, you know, added concern to whatever shoulder issue you got. But yeah, who knows on Correa? He's played well, and then obviously he hasn't as well. So it's hard to say, isn't it? It's hard
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a wait and see. And in fact, a later segment in this podcast, we're going to talk about the six best or the five best bullpen combos in Blue
Yeah,
Jays history. And we're not saying that this combo of Jeff Hoffman and maybe Jimmy Garcia have a chance to break into that top five.
maybe they do.
But yeah, but I also think that if Hoffman is injured, that Garcia has a chance to be that guy if he's not injured too.
100%. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, no, but yeah, what we saw Garcia with the Jays, you would never be afraid of him getting high leverage moments. He did. So, you know, he always did. So I'd be happy to send him out there in the ninth.
So we'll move on here to Roki Sasaki. All of a sudden, everyone's surprised that the Jays are included as one of the three finalists with the Padres and with the Dodgers.
And yeah, correct.
And but should we be surprised? Because they're included in the top three of everybody.
Um, right. This time, though, it's not leverage to obviously, you know, up the price. So this is kind of a different scenario, if you ask me. I think, you know, it's the city of Toronto for sure that I'm sure he would find appealing, and who wouldn't? Especially, you know, the Japanese contingent and the possibilities of the country of Canada, etc. So I'm not surprised on that level. I mean, I'm surprised the team isn't in a great spot. You know what I mean? Depending on what
Yeah.
he's looking for, but he certainly would come in and could establish himself in quick order as the ace with, you know, the contractual situations with the guys that were here and what could be, you know, um, moving forward, how he could fit into that rotation. But I'm not surprised. I think, you know, Toronto has a lot to offer. And, you know, if he comes in and sees the facilities, et cetera, um, who's to say? It feels like a long shot. Japanese guys, you know, I'm sure there's a reason they end up on the West Coast. It's easier to get home.
Yeah.
Um, that's a big factor,
Marketing opportunities are far better.
right?
I mean, there's
Right?
only the GTA, Japanese Canadian population is only less than 19,000. So
Right.
like his, across Canada, I'm sure in Vancouver and the West Coast, and again, we talk West Coast, it's much higher, but in the GTA, the marketing opportunities probably not as good. Well, definitely not as good. So he would have to take advantage of the selling point of the whole country being
Correct.
at his feet.
Correct.
But I
So,
remember, I remember Gord Ash trying to sign the Hernandez boys. They're not brother. I don't think they're brothers. Levon and El Duque.
right.
They were both free agents the same year, and so they flew into Toronto. And Gord Ash took them to dinner at the finest Cuban restaurant in Toronto, which I think at the time was Taco Bell. But but that didn't work
Don't
out.
even need a table. Right.
That did not work out. So I mean, it's where you're comfortable, especially as a foreigner not speaking the same language, basically. But I was a little surprised that Sasaki was included because, as you said, it's not a case of how much money you can throw at a
Right.
player,
Right.
which the Jays have, which Rogers seems to do with the megastars. So like because it's controlled and it's it would be a short term. My understanding, I don't know about yours, Mal, is that it would be a short term deal, and once he's established, he could go as an early free agent somewhere else.
Right.
I think that's it.
Right. Yeah, he's so young, right?
Yeah.
Which
Um,
is why he
yeah. So
can't offer money.
that's a little bit surprising. But
And
the other,
and like you said, it feels like a long shot. But
yeah.
boy, what a coup! How that would change everything and everybody's mind, right? If they could pull that off.
So
Um,
the 15th was the January 15th was the international opening of the
right.
international signing date, which used to be
23rd.
July, and the 23rd is the end of his posting, Sasaki's posting in Japan.
Right.
So even though you can sign international free agents, of which Sasaki is considered, right now, his posting period ends on the 23rd, and that's when I'm sure his decision will come right away.
Right.
In which case, it will open up, to me, it will open up the rest of the market for free agent pitchers who are out there. Teams that didn't get Sasaki will be looking to that market.
Right.
And other teams will be able to get the dregs that aren't signed by the higher price teams.
Right.
So I don't know where the Jays stand in that, but
Well, yeah, the dregs. I
the
mean,
other thing
I'm just
about
yeah,
Sasaki, and with a lot of the Asian pitchers coming over, is that they're used to pitching not every 5 days, but every 6 days or every 7 days sometimes. And so if you consider that Sasaki would be pitching as a 23-year-old rookie 30 starts and giving you maybe 160 innings, I don't see that as having the same impact as an everyday player like a Santander or somebody, especially when you've already got three starters that are veteran and reliable 6 inning guys in Barrios, Gosman, and Bassett.
well, they need the bat most importantly, but it
Yeah.
seems like they can't get the bat. So in lieu of that, I'll take a Sasaki. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
I
even if it
mean,
is for 3 years, right?
right. But I can't. You know, when you think about it, you're meeting with Mark and Ross here. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? No players are showing up to that meeting, and you go to the Dodgers. You got Ohtani and Betts and Yamamoto and Freeman and I mean, what's going to impress you more? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
They say that Sasaki, did you see where Sasaki was in Toronto, or that was the
Yeah,
report?
yeah.
What strikes me there is was he actually in Toronto, or a lot of times they go to Dunedin? Do people report seeing him? Not that he's a public figure, but you always have leaks that somebody saw him at the airport or somebody saw him coming in.
Yeah, in line at the
Yeah, and so this
counter.
came out of the blue. Nobody saw him going into Rogers Center or wherever they had their meeting, which I'm sure was there. Show him the facilities, show him the Pleasure Palace, and say you don't have anything like that in Kyoto. But
I'm sure you can anonymously get into
yeah,
Toronto pretty easily, even if he's not exactly a widely known, recognized person. So and it was reported he was in Toronto, and I
yeah.
saw those, so I'll go with that. I'd believe that. So, but you would think you'd want him to go to Dunedin, obviously. That's
So
where you're showing
yeah,
your product.
so it would be either Sasaki or they would, to me, they would shortly go after that fourth starter that we're talking about, the back
Zaki
end.
and Andrew Heaney.
Yeah, the fourth starter to go behind Bassett in the
Yeah,
rotation.
Cal
Um,
Quantrill, baby. Let's go.
so
Right.
that would be before the end of January, hopefully, because spring training, first day of spring training is February 13th, And I mean, we've seen it before. We've seen players report to spring training, and it may turn out well, but why not have it settled
There's
beforehand?
no value to coming in late. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Other than a guy can't get a deal or he's grinding for a few extra bucks, but for performance, just no benefit to coming in late as a pitcher, especially.
right. So
Hitter can do it. Hitter
the,
can do it. Like,
the one pitcher that they're looking, the one starting pitcher that they're looking for is would be under $10 million. So
yep.
I don't think they'd go out and get the Pivettas anymore or anybody like that who would
Well,
be close.
especially since you signed Hoffman too, right? Like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that was the money, right?
Yeah, that tells you what they can do now for sure.
So here's where the payroll stands to this moment. The 11 players that they had under guaranteed contracts were 153 million or are 153 million. The seven ARB guys that settled were 48 million. Um, and that's 18, but two of them are ILs, so that leaves 16 active for opening day. So you need 10 more to fill out the roster. And as of right now, those 10 are pre-arbitration under team control guys. And there's plenty of candidates there in that regard. I mean, that list includes Bowden Francis, Schneider,
Yep.
Heineman, Brendan Little, Will Wagner, Loperfido, Lucas, Barger, Burr, and Gimenez. That's 10 right there. They're all
Right.
major league caliber players, but they can be upgraded, and that's what we're looking for. So that's your 26-man roster, 11 plus 7 minus 2 ILs plus 10 under control. So what that leaves you with is $14.4 million just to equal the 2024 opening day payroll. So 14.4 million, but every time you replace one of these kids, you add $1 million. So if you replace three guys, it's up to 17.4 million.
Right.
So, I mean, if they go over what Mark Shapiro said, and
One bat.
you said you believe Mark Shapiro when he says that, he's usually pretty much right on because you believe that Rogers is pretty inflexible in that.
They very much have been inflexible on payroll. So yeah, I do believe that. Now, could he somehow? I think there's ways to get creative. I don't think he's going to be able to blow past the budget, but you could do it temporarily with ideas to get out of, get under the number you need to get under if it's a $2 or $3 million. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he's got room to add a bat, but beyond that,
And like he can add a backup catcher that costs you as much as Heineman, but I don't think Heineman's a guy that you want starting 50 ball games, you know?
you cannot have that. Like if there's one thing, especially with Kirk being your guy, you need that solid defensive catcher, and there's a million of them out there, but it can't be Heineman. It just he's your Buffalo Bison that can play that role, come up in a pinch, and play some games.
Right.
But not. It's going to be more than 50 probably.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Well, if they can just hang in until Robo Ump shows up, then they won't need a guy who could frame or anything like that.
Well, which is what Kirk does, right? So,
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, he does not become very valuable if he's not framing pitches.
He'll be
That's for
framing
sure.
his dinner plate. Um, Here, I got top six salaries, and you tell me after I read a number, read a player and a number, tell me worth it or not worth it. And this is just for 25. Vlad, 28.5 million.
Worth it.
Springer, 22.5 million.
Clearly not.
Gosman, 23 million.
Yeah, you for sure. I mean, I expect a little bounce back from Gosman this year too.
Bassett, 21 million.
Not worth it.
Barrios, 18.
At 18, I'll say yes.
And Bo, 16.5.
Absolutely worth it. I expect a big year out of Bo.
So that's for the
You
top
probably disagree, but
for the top six guys, that's $129.5 million, which is more than half the budget.
And I got three worth it's and three not worth it's, I think.
Yeah. But you need stars. You need
Oh,
big names. I mean, some of the deals that were suggested for Vlad are ludicrous, by national media and by on social media. Like
what do you mean?
couple of
Oh,
prospects.
trades.
Yeah,
Oh,
trades.
oh.
Not a deal to sign here, but just trades. It's like fantasy league with the bottom feeders in their own fantasy league making these suggestions. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, obviously in the last, 24 hours, it's been all about the Mets are supposedly, trying to work a deal for Vladdy. So, you're getting all the crazies coming out of the woodwork, right? So, yeah,
Yeah. So
trade for nothing.
so we've determined one starting pitcher, third or fourth. Do they still need one relief pitcher, do you think? Or
I think you end up bringing in some guys, as we talked about, that are very cheap and you take shots at. Yeah, they need one. I don't think they
yeah,
can do much, though.
I
I think
think
you're stuck with what you got at this point, and you better hope Brendan Little isn't Chicken Little. You know what I mean? Sorry. There's not a lot there other than a little stretch here where it's the old thing with all of a sudden you just can't walk in there expecting Bowden Francis to be what he was for a whole season. You mean you're crossing your
yeah.
fingers there. So you
That
need
that is the huge question mark because with the entire off season and spring training for opponents to study Bowden Francis and catch up with the pitch addition change that he
right,
made mid-season, and
right.
now they go into opening day and they're on top of what he's got and what he's expected to throw
Major
in
League.
certain situations. It's a different story. Yeah. So I mean, basically if you go with the um, players who have their contracts in place, that leaves only room for Little. And I like that Chicken Little reference because Blue Jays fans always think the sky is falling.
Right. Well, it has fallen.
And then Burr.
Right. I
And
mean,
then Burr or Nance, they're interchangeable.
hmm
Um, but there's definitely a chance for an upgrade there.
definitely chance for an upgrade, but definitely
Plus,
for those guys too.
yeah,
Actually, here's their
plus,
opportunity.
I mean, one of the guys that is among the seven arb, Zach Pop is not guaranteed to make
Right.
it.
Right.
He won his $900,000 arb, or he settled at 900,000, but that's easily replaced. And
Right.
so
There's a
there's an
million bucks.
opportunity for three relievers. And if one of them is Ryan Yarbrough, who they're saying, I mean, it would seem like a fit because he can eat up innings. Although is if they sign a starter, then Yariel becomes the
Yeah,
guy
that
that
guy,
is the Ryan Yarbrough guy because you
which
don't
is
need.
much better, which is
Yeah.
much better, obviously. It's just whether they're going to get the bat, Griff, and they don't get the bat. Whew, it's an ugly lineup. You know what I mean? Like it's just you
Well,
can't be
I
optimistic on
mean,
it.
no matter what you think of Dalton Varsho's bat, the fact that the bottom four in your order would include Loperfido, Lucas, um, and if Kirk isn't catching, it would be Heineman, and then even Ernie Clement, who is a solid fielder, but he's not going to be an everyday player. He'll
Right.
either play at this moment.
You
I would
can't be.
tune him at third base with Will Wagner
Right.
because Will Wagner's played over 250 games at third base in the course of his college and pro careers.
Right.
Um,
Maybe the plan is to platoon them. You know what I mean? At which you may not have any choice but to do that. But that you're right. That's what you end up with. I'll tell you, if that's the case, Lucas is not hitting in the bottom of the order. That's the problem. He's moving up the order.
yeah, yeah. But when Varsho comes back, it will look cleaner. Even if he's a
Sure.
below average,
Major league player.
well, defensively, and maybe I mean, with Gimenez at second base, do you think that infield defense plus when Varsho's back, the outfield defense is going to improve the starting pitcher's performance. Like, how many times did we watch four hop ground balls go through the right side and for Gosman or Barrios? And you go at the end of the game, you go, oh, he wasn't that good. Well, maybe he would have been that good if that ball had been fielded for an out, would have saved him pitches, would have saved outs, would have saved runs.
Yeah, I think Gimenez is going to obviously, the guy is an elite defender. There's no question. And the pitching staff's going to love it. I mean, is it going to make the difference? No. I mean, you got to score runs. I mean,
Yeah, well, I
Marshall was
mean,
there, but yeah, no, hey, I
yeah,
going to
I'm a
help
believer in I'm a believer in Gimenez's ability to hit.
to
I
hit.
just yeah, I just
That would be huge.
maybe because he did well against the Blue Jays, and it's another case where I remember in September one year, Jorge Roque of the Cardinals hit a grand slam at I think it was Jerry Park. And during the offseason, that was the last impression. During the offseason, they traded for Jorge Roque, and he never got a chance to hit against the Expos again. So he became really horseshit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the Austin Hayes theory, right? So, I mean, you
Yeah,
can't
right.
sign him.
All right, I got top five list. Now we were talking about bullpens, and we were talking about Hoffman, and we referred to the top five list this week, and the challenge was the top five bullpen combos, so closer and setup man in Blue Jays team history. We'll start at number five. You give me your number five, and I'll give you mine, and then we'll keep going that way. You give four, I'll give four.
Okay, first off, I'm going to give a quick honorable mention just to the not that it's hard to even say first memories of Vukovic being the first closer of this Blue Jay 1977 squad and Mike Willis pitching a lot for really well for them out of the bullpen in 77. That's just an honorable mention because that just, that first season I have a real, connection to being a young lad and
That's
was
fair.
just and they were good. They were actually good. So that was fun. But my number five is in a similar vein. I'm going to go back to 82, Dale Murray and Joey McLaughlin. That was the first, kind of tandem that I remember of the Jays before they got good. They were starting to compete a little bit, and those guys had some memorable moments. Now they also had some memorable moments of failing when it mattered. But that's my number five is a fun, maybe not pure excellence, but I wanted to, make note of how much I enjoyed watching those guys pitch, and they were generally quite good, obviously,
Yeah.
for that
I,
club.
they're not on my list, but I remember Spud Dale Murray as a rookie in Montreal, and he broke in. I think his ERA for his rookie season was like under two,
Right.
and he threw nothing but hard sinkers, and he it looked like he was going to be something special, but it didn't work out for him because it was a case of a bad offense in
Right.
Montreal, and that 76 season was, I think, 483,000 people. It was an Olympic year in Montreal, so nobody gave a shit about the Expos.
Right.
Jerry Park last year at Jerry Park, and I think it was like 485,000 people over 81 games. That's not good.
That's not good.
And
Wow.
the team won 52 games that year. So
What
that's
was the capacity at Jerry Park?
29,
29.
29,000. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a minor league ballpark, but it was our
Pretty
minor
good.
league ballpark.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. What's your
So,
five?
my number five is 2019 with Ken Giles and Joe Biagini.
Wow, that's not on my list. Wow. I mean, hey, Joe had some success, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, Joe was that was his best year. He was broke in as a setup. Ken Giles had an outstanding year. ERA under two, I think 30 something saves. Biagini came in and worked his way into the setup role. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of Joe Biagini's post games.
Dick.
Yeah, but pre-game we were on the West Coast and he's from the Bay Area.
Yes, he is.
And so I said, you stay at home when you're here? And he said, yeah. I said, how far is it from home? He said, it depends how fast I drive.
That's
And I
such
went,
a
yeah.
Biagini.
I said, that's Joe Biagini right there.
In a nutshell. That's right. And very true. That's correct. Correct, Joe.
So it wasn't on your list,
No.
but yeah, it's more for Ken Giles. And then I was surprised to see that his primary setup guy was Biagini that year. And
Yeah.
besides, 2019 was my first year in PR for the Jays. And so I have a special place in my heart for
Right, right. I can understand that for
you.
sure.
So who's number 4 for yours?
Number four to me is 86, 87, Tom Hankey, Mark Eichhorn. Uh, Eichhorn had some legit dominating years with, and the 86 year in particular. And obviously, Hankey was an established stud at that point. Um, you know, obviously, everybody talks about Hanky Ward, but Hanky had some other partners in there too before Dwayne showed up. So, and that's when the Jays were obviously really establishing themselves. 86, obviously 87, and like they were just good ball teams. You know what I mean? They were fun teams to watch. So that's my number four. I love watching Icorn pitch. Different
Yeah,
style.
yeah, different style for sure. And just spelling his name, I think I spelt it wrong 3 times here. So
It's not that
Double C
not
or
that
double
hard.
H, double C or double H. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
My number 4 was Jordan Romano and Eric Swanson from 23. And that was Swanson's
Thought
first
about
year
that.
coming over. And he did exactly what they thought he should be doing. And Romano was at his peak form, coming off an injury, before an injury. And that was what they were hoping for in 24, and it didn't happen, right? I mean,
Right.
that was that combination of setup man and closer in 23. If that had repeated itself in 24, who knows what would have happened, because they disbanded that bullpen at the trade deadline, and
Well,
we all saw what
disaster.
happened at the end of the season. I think it made the team even well. John Schneider said 10 losses. Bullpen cost 10 losses.
Yeah, and I
Can you
mean,
throw, can you throw 8 guys under the bus?
that's right. He just did. Yeah. And I wanted to include Romano on this list, and he just didn't make my top five. And I mean, man, he was dominating. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Like Romano had some real solid years for this club. And I had that on my almost made it. And the other one, well, yeah, talk about it later. I have him
Yeah.
on
It might be on my list.
yeah, I almost have him on almost another list that he
Oh,
didn't make.
okay.
But, number three for
Yeah.
me is 2008. Great ball team. BJ Ryan and Scott Downs. Scott Downs was unhittable that year. And BJ was, BJ at that point. Still, he had the '06 year, and the '06 was a better year, but he was still pretty dominant in '08. But I mean, this comes more from Scott Downs. I mean, I think he posted, what was it, a 1.78 ERA, almost through 70 ball games. And not he wasn't throwing one batter, he was throwing the innings. You know what I mean? Like he was untouchable. That's as good as you could be that year. And man, I mean, I was there obviously at the time, and it was shutdown time, and that team, would they win 93 games or something like that? That was Halliday won 20, Burnett won 18 games,
Yeah.
and that's why those guys were shutting the door. You know what I mean? That was an excellent ball team.
That was, I think, on AJ Burnett, that was his career year, and obviously his best year with the Jays. And I looked it up, and if I remember correctly, the entire bullpen didn't give up any runs in relief of AJ Burnett all
Right.
year, which is why his win total is so high. There were no blown leads by the bullpen or anything like that. As soon as AJ was out of the game, the bullpen came in and shut it down. It
Yeah.
was incredible. Yeah.
That was JP Ricciardi's best team, I think, right there. So
Yeah.
that was a
I
lot
think
of fun.
I told Gibby. Gibby was managing, right?
Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah,
I
yeah,
told
Gibby.
because every
Yeah, I
time
was Gibby. Yeah.
every time Scott Downs left the mound, so his protection, he was a cone of protection standing on top of the mound. Every time he left the mound, he got injured. He pulled a muscle, he sprained an ankle, or like he'd cover first and sprain an
Yeah.
ankle.
Well, he wasn't exactly a fitness buff, let's say.
Right.
Wasn't in his
Yeah. So
makeup.
I'd agree with you as long as he stayed on the mound.
And he did that year. He did.
Yeah. Um, so that was your number
Three.
three. My number three. It was difficult to pick setup. So it was 93 with Ward, the closer, and I would say Timlin as the setup guy. But
Okay.
it could have been Eichhorn who was on his
Right.
second go
That's the
round.
thing.
Yeah.
Wasn't really one guy.
Yeah. And then even Danny Cox was in there, you
He
know?
was. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was okay too. Yeah.
And I think
Danny Cox, big
wasn't
dude.
wasn't Frankie Castillo in there also?
Probably. Yeah.
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 But I put it as Ward, Eichhorn slash Timlin. And
Timlin.
I mean, that was Henke was gone. I think they trusted Ward after his run as a setup guy, and it worked out, and they won a second World Series, which isn't always easy.
Right.
Your number two?
My number two, also from the time I was there, is 2015 when we could actually go 7, 8, 9. But this is Osuna, Sanchez, and Brett Cecil was the seventh inning guy. They literally handled it that way. When they got rolling after we started winning all those games. I mean, you got to the seventh inning, turned it over to Cecil. He pitched the seventh, Sanchez the eighth, Osuna. And no, to be honest with you, Osuna was your best chance. Cecil and Sanchez were lights out at that point. But that combination of Osuna and Sanchez, that's Sanchez at his best. And he had that fastball and two-seamer sinker. Just guys couldn't. It was just in the eighth inning was nasty. So that was a lot of fun to watch because you knew if the game was close, you were probably pulling, and they did. I mean, won a lot of ball games with those guys in the back end. So they were as dominating as anybody in baseball at that time.
Yeah, so you had Sanchez and yeah, I mean those
It
were
didn't take shape until almost the second half,
right.
obviously. But
Cecil and Sanchez, both starters converted to relievers,
yeah,
and both like set up, lights out, can pitch more than 3 outs. Who on this current team do you think could fill that role, like as a former starter, going into the bullpen and providing
right. Yari.
Yariel,
Yep,
Wyrod?
Yari.
Yeah,
100%. I mean, he could be a deadly weapon there if if like, I mean, I get it. I mean, if you get more innings out of him as a starter, maybe, but I mean, sometimes you let guys just deal for an inning, maybe two with his stuff. That
yeah,
could be a real weapon. You can use that if you can use that, 2 out of 3 days sometimes, especially against, some stronger opponents. That makes a difference. It makes that.
yeah. We've
High
talked about
leverage moments.
Yeah, we've talked about that because as a starter, he'll look great once through the order, or maybe even starting into the second time through the order. And then all of a sudden he hits some sort of a mental wall, not a physical wall, but he just can't hold it together for 5, 6 innings. So maybe his role would be like an Aaron Sanchez, where he just shortens up everything, throws harder for a shorter period of time, and goes out there and blows people away, you
And
know?
you impact more games that way. You know what I mean? Obviously, you need your starters. Somebody's got
Yeah.
to start the ball game,
Well,
but
that's we're assuming that
you get
the
another
Blue
guy.
Jays go out and get another starter
And
because
and they're
otherwise he's the first choice as the number five guy.
and they're competent. The rotation is competent as it stands, anyways. It's not
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
still
that's why it was sort of surprising when at the end of the season they said, yeah, we need the rotation at one starter is a priority for us. That was sort of surprising because their rotation when Bowden Francis showed up looked pretty solid going into next year. But then again, maybe they have the same reservations about Bowden Francis that we just discussed,
yeah.
where
And
his
they're
new
and you
weapon
have
is
guys
now
that
not a new weapon anymore.
and you have guys on the wrong side of it. You know what I mean with Bassett and Gosman, but that doesn't always mean it just goes downhill. I mean,
Right.
they,
Especially
they
with an
can.
improved infield defense.
And they're smart pitchers, those two. Like
Yeah.
they know how to pitch. So I'm not expecting them to regress again. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? be a bounce back again
Yeah,
from
well,
the
that's what I'm talking with the defense. And I think it would be, if Santander was the hitter and you moved, if Santander was signed, I would move Springer to left and have Santander in right. I don't know about you, but and then the infield and outfield defense would be pretty solid.
yeah. I mean, yeah, right. I think the defense will be
You
fine.
you like Springer and right though, obviously from
If you don't have a better option,
yeah.
obviously he's fine out there. Obviously, he's
Well,
game.
against the Blue Jays, Santander plays like a Gold Glover.
Yeah, right. I'll play Springer out there personally. Who's your number two?
My number two is 86 and 87 with Henke and Eichhorn. I think you had them
Yeah,
number four.
number four.
Yeah, they're number two on my list. I mean, that was coming off, that was when 85 was like they became a perennial
Yep,
postseason threat, and they
yep.
needed guys at the back end, and Henke and Eichhorn were those guys. You're
They
number
sure.
one?
Well, number one, do we even need to talk about it? I mean, one of the greatest duels of all time, I think, in baseball history, Tom Hankey, Dwayne Ward, right? It's got to be your number one as well.
That's from 1988 to 1992.
Come on, man.
You very rarely get one reliever being able to perform at the highest level for 5 years in a
Or
row.
more than 1 year out of a duo. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
87, so 88, 89, 90, 90. So 5 years and all contending seasons. And
Right.
same two guys. There were years where Henke had 35 saves and Ward, there was one year where he had 25. Like these guys were unbelievable. And that's where for that many years in a row, it was a 6 inning ball game, right?
Well, and that's why I say we're not. It's not just the best in Jays history. It's among the best of all time. You know what I mean? If you want to do it that way, if you're
Yeah.
doing the all-time major league duels, they're there.
Yeah, no,
So
that was when I was researching it, and I knew they were my number one, but I kept going back to the year before, back to the year before, back to the year before, and they just kept going. Like that's crazy that those same two guys, and it makes me wonder why it took Dwayne Ward so long to get into the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame in St. Mary's because that's incredible.
well, it makes you slightly overshadowed. I don't know because obviously he became the closer himself. Obviously, when Hanky moved on. The one other one, we talked about Romano. The other one I considered was in 22 with Adam Simber. Just how good Adam Simber doing his Mark
Yeah,
Eichel impression was. I
yeah,
mean,
right.
holy smokes, he was lights out that year too. So
Yeah.
that's another one I considered. Just didn't make the list. But,
Yeah, no, that's because his was sort of like a shooting star. It was a year and
yeah,
a and then he was gone.
and then he was gone from the
Uh,
Where Are They Now files.
so yeah, right. So just before we get into our final segment with the NFL weekend, um, free agents that are remaining. I know you've been a Bregman guy, but it doesn't look like he's going to sign with the Jays. Who do you think? Where do you think he's headed?
Back to Houston.
Yeah.
I,
Well, I mean,
they didn't offer him what
that
he wanted
trade with
either.
yeah, they made that trade with the Cubs
Yeah,
and so now they've got a first baseman and they've got a third baseman. So
right.
he might have and he can't move to second. That's Altuve.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Like
So
clearly doesn't want to come
Alonso,
to Toronto.
Pete Alonso looks like he's going to have to go back to New York Mets on
Right.
a short-term deal.
Crazy when you don't.
Santander, we just talked about his avenues. I just saw Profar's name come up with regard to the Jays, but everybody's name comes up with regard to the Jays.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as we move on though, he probably becomes more of an option for them.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm always amazed how few people are interested in 40 home run plus guys like Alonzo, eh? Like it's
Yeah.
just like he's the dregs for some
Yeah.
like
And it bothers me when everybody, oh, well, he's a first baseman and the first basemen aren't worth that. Who says that? First base or positions salary determines what free market determines what a player's worth.
yeah, and I get the assertion, but You show me in this day and age how many great first basemen are out there. There isn't. It's not like the 80s and 90s where, like there is not a lot of high-end first baseman
Yeah.
pumping 40 bombs. I'll tell you that. Like
Right.
it's just not there in this day and age. So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, I think when the traditional corner infield having to be sluggers and hit 30, 40 home runs, that disappeared when all of a sudden the middle infielders hit the
yeah,
gym and were starting to hit 20 to 30 home runs. And
right.
then you could spread it out more. And then you had your Mark Graces at first base and you had,
Doug Mankiewicz.
yeah, you had guys that were just spinning the ball into the opposite field for a single, and that became acceptable, you know?
Oh, Luis Arias, right?
Yeah, yeah, right. He never would have had that chance.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, a guy who never would have had a chance, I talked about Terry Francona and the interview, the
Right.
conversation that I'm going to do. I asked him about his exit velocity, which he was the guy. I think I had bigger arms and legs than him, and that's ridiculous, you
No,
know.
I believe it back then. Like that just wasn't a thing. So,
Yeah. Plus, he's a guy I never thought ever would be a major league manager because wherever I went, he was there. And I knew I was never going to be a major league manager.
he's
Okay.
often still been there. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't have wanted him hopping over the bar to help me with a biker. That's all I know.
That's right. He picked good company that day. That's right.
So, NFL finishing segment here. NFL division weekend this week. There were 6 games last week, and Mal, you were 5-1. You were on.
I hope people tailed us this week. Well, you were 4-2, Griff.
I
Like
was
like
4-2, but that's not 5-1. So now for the season, you're 22-20. For the season, I'm 25-17.
just
So
out there
all of a
making
sudden,
people
going
money here.
from $6, we're worth following again.
We're out making people money here. So
So
hop on,
the which?
hop on the bandwagon.
Yeah, hop on, baby. So we'll go game by game here. You give your pick first for the first one, and then we'll switch up for the second. We'll have a snake prognostication here.
All right.
First one, Texans plus 6.5 at the Chiefs.
Isn't it 8.5 now?
Oh shit.
You
Yeah.
better get you
All
got
right.
a wrong number there.
Yeah, you correct me if you've got the. We're using CBS Sportsline as our uh, until we get an official gambling
Yeah,
sponsor.
yeah, it's 8.5. I'll at least because
All
I
right.
mean I'll
Texans
lock
plus
in
eight and a
six and a
half.
half. I'll lock in 6.5 if I
Texans
can.
plus 8.5 at Chiefs. Who you
Yeah,
got?
I am. It feels like after last week, the Texans are a little bit of a darling getting all these points, but I'm going to go with the Super Bowl champs, Kansas City Chiefs, laying the 8.5. I think, they've played well down the stretch, outside of not playing in the last game. And Andy Reid with this time off, the Texans won their Super Bowl last week. They won a playoff game, and I think they'll deem this a success either way. I mean, obviously they're going to play hard, but I'm kind of thinking the Chiefs are going to pull away in the second half and cover this number. So I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs, lay in the 8.5.
I am going to take the 8.5, take the Texans. CJ Stroud is back to what he
Look
should have.
good.
He was
Look good.
better, and he's got a better receiving core. He had one important receiver come back. He's And the other thing about the Chiefs is they have not played, their starters have not played a game since Christmas Day. What is that, 24 days? They took the last week
Oh, I
off.
know.
They
I
had a
got
bye week.
yes.
And so if rust never sleeps, it will happen in the
It's
first
been
half.
creeping. Yeah, it's been creeping for
The
sure.
first half, Texans will be leading going into the second half.
I'm fine with that.
And 8.5, the Texans will be able to cover that 8.5. That's what I'm saying, is that the Chiefs offense has not shown an ability to pull away from anybody. They don't want their man Patrick Mahomes to get hurt. And so once they get up by 10, they'll
Okay.
just sit back and allow that backdoor cover. So
It's not surprising that in another pool we are in that you need the Texans and I need the Chiefs. So
but at least I'm admitting they may not win the game. So
right. Okay.
second game, the second Saturday game, I'll go first here.
Okay.
Is that plus 10? Commanders plus 10? Is that what you got?
Yeah, 10's fine. It's 9.5, 10. So 10's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go 9.5 if that's what you got.
Okay.
Commanders plus 9.5 at the Lions. And the Lions, of course, you never know what to expect from them in terms of offense. They're the most imaginative. They have the most
Yeah.
aggressive head coach.
Lots of points.
Their defense has a ton of injuries, but they've played through them. They've had guys step into the system and really step up. So I'm taking the Commanders.
Okay.
I think
For all the reasons you just mentioned, I'm also taking the Commanders.
the Commanders have showed a resilience and a late game panache that I think with their quarterback who's no longer like, when do you stop being a rookie quarterback? Because he's played every game. I think he missed one, and Mariota stepped in and won that game, and then he sat and Mariota won that game. So I think that this guy's no longer should be considered a rookie. He's a leader. He comes up big late in games, and so with the points, I think they have a chance to win that game. But with the points, I'll definitely go there.
Yeah, I'm, obviously with Jaden Daniels and the way he's playing, there appears to be something special at the moment in this season, and he's just got that it factor. I know that sounds ridiculous, maybe that I expect him to play well. I don't see a scenario where, he looks like that rookie, or even the Sam Darnold that we saw last
Yeah.
week. He's just.
Did we call that game?
We did, didn't we? Yeah, we nailed it. Jaden Daniels is going to compete his ass off here. And whether that's good enough to win, I don't know. But I think they're going to put a scare into the Lions for sure. So that's why I'm taking the points. I just think that's a smart move here.
So you go first on the next one. We're into Sunday's game. The early Sunday game is the Rams. I got plus 6.5. What do you got?
Yeah, I got 6.5 too.
Rams 6.5 at the Eagles.
Yeah. I think the Sunday games are very difficult. Well, they're all difficult, obviously. You could see them kind of falling down a bit, but there's such a solid unit, both sides of the ball. If Barkley gets going, take the heat off Hurts. But I'm a massive Matthew Stafford fan. I just think he's one of the. Like I said this before, behind Lamar and Allen, he's there. He's as good as anybody in this league. A veteran, smart. I'm taking the 6.5 points just to keep them competitive. He's just such a heady quarterback, and he's the better quarterback of the two in this game. Put it that way. Could they get rolled? I'm sure, but I'm just going to take the points. I love Matthew Stafford. I think he just finds a way when this game comes down to the last couple possessions.
I am a believer. I'm a believer in the sporting gods, and that the gods have a say in decisions and outcomes.
Yes.
And I believe that Jared Goff is meant to face Matthew Stafford. I believe that is in the cards.
Yeah.
And that only happens if the Lions
Lions win and Rams win.
The Lions win and the Rams win. I've got the Commanders plus the points, but I think the Lions will win the Saturday game. I got the Rams winning this game with plus 6.5 points. I got them winning outright in this game.
Folks, go out and bet the money line. You're going to get a good number.
I think that Eagles fan who was cursing that woman sports fan, the gods are paying attention to that.
Yeah, that's right. I'm with you.
They are. And so that's I got the Rams plus 6.5, Rams money line too.
The hand of God is going to have a couple more hit passes.
Small G God, not the big God. He's busy with other stuff like the California wildfire.
Fair. Small G.
The last game, Ravens, are they -1 at the Bills?
They're -1. right now.
Ravens -1 at the Bills. It's going to be cold and windy, and they got comparable offensive weapons, but Derrick Henry and Lamar, I think in those conditions, are going to win that game. And so I have to go with the Ravens in that case.
I I I mean, obviously, this is, I've been geared up for this game for a long time, and being a massive Bills fan, pretty excited. I too am going to choose Baltimore from
Wow.
a -1, and the reason is similar to what you said. My concern, I think the Bills, if Josh gets going, I mean, hey man, he can will you to a victory. Um, Derrick Henry and even Lamar, when they throw in a six lineman and then they got the fullback Ricard, that's almost seven linemen. I'm not sure how the Bills are going to defend that. They're not big. They're not big on the defensive line. And obviously, they're always running two linebackers out there. And then now they're healthy. Milano and Bernard, you can't beat those guys. But that's some big boys running downhill on you. Game plan is to run the ball, let Lamar run the ball, pass when needed. You know what I mean? Because they
Yeah.
have a distinct advantage there with size, and you keep the ball out of Josh's hands. It's hard for him to win the game. So that's
Yeah.
that's what scares me. But I'm going to go with Baltimore as well.
Yeah. In both with both of those teams, they got two big talented tight ends, both of them. And I think that
Yeah.
the difference will come in fourth downs not made and your basic turnovers, because head to head they're pretty even, but turnovers and not making it on fourth downs will be the key. Yeah, so that about does it for this edition of Exit Philosophy. When are you going on
A
CHCH?
week today.
A week today.
Yeah.
All right.
On
You're going on
Thursday
in the evening.
evening.
So you won't have been on when we record our next show,
No, it'll be that day. So
but
like it's
you'll be
yeah.
fired up and ready to go.
I'll be yeah, all doctored up and full of wonderful facts and information. So
And
yes.
like I said earlier, Terry Francona interview is, if I do say so myself, very entertaining.
When's
Uh,
that out?
make you smile. It'll probably be out Monday. We'll probably
Monday.
have it out Monday. Give people time to download this podcast, and then we'll follow it up with Francona on Monday. And yeah, so Exit Philosophy you can find on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Like, subscribe, share, and we'd appreciate that. And also, griffsthepitch.com has all my columns and every episode of Exit Philosophy, plus all my conversations. So just try that out. If you got nothing to do between games on Saturday and Sunday, just have a listen, have a look. And I appreciate it, Mal. Thanks for joining us and co-hosting today.
Yeah.
And we will talk to you next week. I don't think Sasaki will have signed yet.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. But
Yeah. We'll see.
go Bills, baby. Go Bills.
Another bronze medal for the Blue Jays, maybe.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And thanks, Mal. And we'll see you
Yeah,
next week.
you got it.